So this time, why don't we talk about why Japanese people have a hard time listening to English? Okay.
Yep.
I think there are two reasons why Japanese people are not good at listening. So let me talk about the mechanism of listening first. So I think, there are two steps. So the first one is your ability to catch each word. And then the next step is your ability to understand the meaning of the sentence. Because if you don't catch each word, it's impossible to understand the meaning of the sentence, right? So I think there are two steps. And let me elaborate on that. So talking about your ability to catch each word, let's say there's a sentence like, I'm going to be a billionaire. In this case, if you can't catch each word, as I said earlier, you can't understand the meaning of the sentence. We talked about this before, but there are three important components for English studies: vocab, grammar, and pronunciation. And in this case, pronunciation and vocab are important because let's say there's a sentence like, I'm gonna be a billionaire. In this case, going to is pronounced as gonna. So if you don't know this rule, it's impossible to catch this sound. And then there's a word billionaire. So if you don't know this word, this sound becomes noise. So you can't understand the meaning of the sentence, right? So pronunciation and vocab are important in this situation. And then if you can catch each word, you move on to the next step, which is imirikai in Japanese. So like I said earlier, this is the ability to understand the meaning of the sentence. So to understand the meaning of the sentence, you need to have knowledge about grammar and vocab. So if you know these things, you can understand the meaning of the sentence. So I think these things are important for listening. So yeah, that's my opinion. So what do you think about this? What are your thoughts on listening?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you on both of those. And I think maybe this is kind of what you mean by the imirikai, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Just understanding the meaning of the sentence. I think of it also as like processing. I think your brain has to be practiced in processing sentences and meanings from them, because I'm just thinking about, like, sometimes every once in a while I'll do a little challenge and I'll like try to watch an anime without subtitles in Japanese, or I'll like listen to Japanese people speaking on YouTube videos without subtitles. And sometimes in those situations, it's like, even if I know the words, my brain doesn't process them fast enough to keep up. So sometimes, like, I'll hear one sentence and then I'll catch a lot of the words, but not all of them. And then like I'll hear something in there and I'll be like, wait, what was that? And then he or she or whoever it is, they start saying the next sentence. And then I have a little bit more context. So then I figure out what the previous sentence was. I was like, oh, that was that word. I remember that word now, or, and so then it's just like I knew all the words, but I just couldn't recall them or process them fast enough in my brain. But I think just in general as well, being able to process and like absorb it and take it in and then understand it is also very important. Being able to just practice that. It was the same thing like when I was in language school as well. Like, I would be sitting listening to my teachers, and at first I was not used to it. So I just, like, it was rough. Like, my brain could not handle it. But the more I listened to it and the more I did that every day, my brain got used to picking out the words, but also processing it as a whole and understanding the sentences. And my brain got quicker at being able to just be like, oh, okay, that. So, yeah.
Like you said, in conversation, people speak fast. So your brain has to process the sentences really quick. So I think it's very important to get used to the language. So I think that's true. And I think it happens sometimes because, native English speakers speak really fast. So I think, I feel that I can relate to that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But in my opinion, I think, we've talked about this before, but immersing yourself in the language is very important. And I think that is true. But that is not necessarily true because even if you hear English all the time, I don't think your listening abilities will get better just by listening to it. So I think
you have to study it too.
So
yeah.
Listening to another language is, of course, important, but how can I say it? Just listening is not enough. So you need to look up words sometimes. And then if you listen to the language sometimes, then I think it's going to work out.
Right. Yeah. definitely. I mean, yeah, the best approach is to combine the two. Is to have that studying of the language, the vocab and the grammar, and then combined it with the practical listening and speaking is the best way to do it.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Yeah, so I think I talked about this before, but I think in my opinion, for English learners, there are three important components. So vocab, grammar, and pronunciation. So people should learn all of these three first.
Yeah.
So, and then, after that, people can do whatever they want to do, like ACAN, TOEIC, and like the conversation. So they can practice speaking and listening.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. What do you do to practice listening? Like, obviously you have these conversations with me, but are there any other things that you do or that you did a lot beforehand to study and practice your listening?
Yeah, there are a couple of things that I have done so far. So watching videos about pronunciation helped me improve my listening skills because, like I said earlier, if you know the rules of pronunciation, you can expect how people speak. So in the last lesson, I think we talked about reduction and linking, right? Do you remember these two?
Yeah.
Yeah, so for example, there's a sentence like, what are you doing? So in this case, people, usually native English speakers, don't say, what are you doing? This sounds choppy, right? But the sound changes like, what are you doing? What are you doing? So because it's linking and reduction. So if you know the rule of pronunciation, you can catch them. You can catch this sentence. So I think this is important. And then also, I talked about this before, but I think doing shadowing is also important. Do you remember this? Yeah.
I think, remind me again exactly what it is. Is it like, oh yeah, like repeating the pronunciations and such after you have listened to them, and right?
Yeah. So shadowing is a language learning technique based on listening to a native English speaker and repeating word for word aloud with as little delay as possible.
Right. Yeah.
So this is what I do because if you do shadowing, you can analyze what kind of things you are not good at. So you can analyze your weak points, such as pronunciation and words. So you can look them up after doing shadowing, and then you can improve your weak points.
Yeah, I think that's so important. We talked about it a little bit before, but I don't think we got as deep into it as I want to right now, just because I think that's so important for your muscle memory as well. Because
muscle memory,
yeah, in your mouth, because because I don't think people realize, but your mouth, like you have to train those muscles to be able to say certain words as well.
Yeah, that's true.
And I noticed as well, like sometimes I would do a lot of studying of Japanese, you know, by myself, like reading and studying words and such, but I didn't spend as much time practicing them, saying them, or doing shadowing like you said. And then I'll have it in my brain, and then when I go to actually try to use it in real life for the first time, sometimes my mouth is just like like I can't say it, and then I have to try really hard for a second. I was like, oh, that's a new word. My mouth is not used to saying that word. So I think that's super important as well, especially for Japanese people learning English, because for me, it's still difficult because there are some sounds in Japanese, mostly just like rarireru, like that we don't have in the English language. But there's also just the way Japanese words are pronounced. They are very, compared to English, I think they are very like clear pronunciations. So what's like a good example? I don't know why this word popped in my head, but like minoru, like I could easily see that. Like for me, now I'm more conscious of it, but if I had been trying to say that, you know, like years ago when I first started studying Japanese, I think it's very likely that I would say like minuru or something, because for American English speakers, like you were saying, we have a lot of sounds bad, but I think we just have like a lot of like lazy pronunciation where we say like, instead of like what are you doing, we say what you doing, or what are you doing, you know? And we kind of slur our words and just kind of, we don't pronounce all the vowels very clearly sometimes, let alone the consonants. But so when that goes over to Japanese, for me, for example, I have to be very conscious of like saying minoru instead of like minuru, you know, like instead of slurring it together. So that's just like an example of English to Japanese. But
Mhm.
then for Japanese people studying English, we have all of these consonants and sounds that the Japanese language doesn't have, like V and R and L and all of those things. But
yeah, those sounds are very difficult for Japanese people. R sound, L sound, especially these two sounds are very difficult. For me, V sound and B sound, these two are not that difficult, to be honest.
Yeah, so I just think that, like you said, shadowing is very important because not only do you learn the pronunciation, but your mouth learns the pronunciation, the muscle
Yeah,
memory.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think so too.
And then I think just the act of also speaking it out loud helps to remember it better, to memorize it better.
Yeah.
Because you create those like neural pathways in your brain. You like create the experience of it, and then your body is hearing it again from your own mouth. And it's just, yeah, I think it's very important.
Yeah, that's true. I think people get used to the language unconsciously without thinking anything. They get used to the language if they do shadowing. So I think, listening to the language and doing shadowing are very important in terms of improving listening skills and then improving speaking skills as well. Because like you said, your muscle remembers the movement.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we talked about shadowing. And then I think one of the important things is to use a script, because if you don't use a script, you can't analyze your weak points, right?
Yeah, I agree. That makes it way, 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 way easier to actually learn, in my opinion, because you can see exactly everything that's being said and pick out, like you were saying, your weak points, the things that you don't know, the words you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like many Japanese people don't think about listening seriously. So they just listen to English without thinking anything. They don't analyze their weak points. So I think this is one of the reasons many Japanese people are not good at listening to English.
Right. Yeah, you have to be conscious and active with your listening and your studying. Otherwise, it won't get you very far. You won't make progress as quickly.
Yeah, I think, of course, continuing studying is important. And, I think making efforts is very important. I understand that. But going in the right direction is also important as well, because even if you study very hard, you might not be able to achieve your goal if you don't do the right studies, right? I think which way you're going to think about these things is important.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
How do you study Japanese, by the way?
How do I study Japanese? Every day lately I've been trying to tackle the N2 vocabulary. So, this might be something good if there's something similar for people. I actually use a little app called Anki for memorization. And it basically will show me like a bunch of vocabulary words in like flashcard style, but it's electric, like on my screen. But then every time it shows it, and then I can say, okay, I try to remember it, and then I hit the button, and then it shows the meaning, and then I'll know if I got it right or if I got it wrong. And then I can kind of say like, oh, was this difficult or like easy? Or, I basically choose like how well I was able to memorize it. And if I got it wrong or if I couldn't remember at all, then I just hit a button that says again, and then it'll like show it to me again within a few minutes. But basically then, based on all of those things, it tracks like how well in theory you should be memorizing the words. And then so you can have it present to you, for example, 50 new words every day. But then it also will go through and make you review words that you previously learned based on how much time has passed and how well you were remembering them before based on your responses. So like if I was able to remember that word and I say, oh, this was easy, then it might not show it to me again for like 5 days. And then it'll come up again in 5 days. And then when it comes up in 5 days again, if I say easy again, then it might not show it to me for like 10 days. And so basically it kind of tracks your review progress and your studying progress in a way that's very efficient, because otherwise you're just looking at a list and you have to go through and review every single word. You've probably struggled with this as well. I think everyone who starts to learn more vocabulary, more and more vocabulary, struggles with this, because your list of vocabulary gets longer and longer. So then you have to spend all that time reviewing all of those words. And it's like, how am I supposed to have time for all of this? But it's a very convenient app that tracks your progress in that way. So then you don't have to go through and study and review every single new word every single day. So you're able to spend your time a little bit more efficiently. But so I've been doing that. And then I haven't been as consistent as I should be, but whenever I can in the evening after coming home from work, well, I say evening, it's usually pretty late. I get out of work at like 9 p.m. So at night before I go to bed, I try to study a little bit of Japanese grammar out of a textbook that I have at home. And then while I'm in the car driving to and from work, I also listen to audio lessons in my car. So those are my main approaches right now.
Wow, okay. Like I said, Anki sounds very useful because you can memorize words very efficiently. So yeah, I think nowadays there are many tools which you can use AI. So like you said, Anki is one of them. And have you ever heard of Quizlet? I think there's an application called Quizlet.
I think I've heard of it, yeah.
Oh,
but I've never used it.
Yeah, I have two favorite tutors on Camry, John and Cheyenne. She's Canadian, and she was talking about Quizlet. She uses this application to memorize vocabulary. So yeah, I thought that Anki and Quizlet are kind of similar in terms of using AI, and you can learn words very efficiently, right?
Yeah. It's called Quizlite. Is that what it is?
What I said was Quizlet.
Quizlet?
Yeah.
Quizlet. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Quizlet. Yes.
Interesting. I'll have to check it out.
I don't use this though. She was talking about this, and I took her lesson last time, so this might be a little helpful.
I think Anki probably, I mean, that's sort of a Japanese name, so I think it's largely for studying Japanese, maybe? I don't know, but it might have. Because the cool thing about Anki is like you download the app and then you can pretty much go through and just like search on the internet and download any deck of flashcards that you want. So like for me, I'm just studying right now the N2 vocabulary deck, but there are other decks as well for like N3 or whatever. I remember when I very first started studying Japanese, there was just this huge, massive deck of like just kanji characters, and it was like, I don't know, I feel like it was like 4,000 kanji characters or something like that. I don't know, but yeah. But so the cool thing is you can go through and search online and see if there's a good deck for you to study. So I wonder if they have ones for English as well. I mean, worst comes to worst, as a Japanese person, you could just use the Japanese deck, but you would always be looking at the word in Japanese and then you would have to translate it to English and say like, how do I say that? But yeah.
I feel like many people use Anki. Maybe this application has a good reputation because many people use this.
I think so. It seems to be pretty well known, well used, just based on, hearing about it from people on the internet and such. But yeah. Cool.
You mentioned audio lesson. What is that? Audio lesson?
Yeah, it's like sort of like a little podcast. But they break it up into lessons and they'll teach you a little bit of vocab and grammar, and then you listen to the conversation and it's very useful. But yeah, looks like we are going to run out of time for today. But I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, in 2 weeks.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Taku.
Yeah, thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah, take care.
Yeah, thank you. 現在、英語コーチングの生徒さんを募集しています。英語学習を頑張っているけど継続することが難しい。英語力が伸び悩んでいる。TOEIC のスコアが頭打ちしている。ぜひこのような方は無料カウンセリングへどうぞ。下の概要欄から申し込むことができます。ぜひ無料カウンセリングでお会いしましょう。